and Audacity in 3, 2, 1.
Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Barbell Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Christina Lynn, and I'm here with my co-host, Marissa Roy. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking all about cardio. But before we get into that, this is a public service announcement. We have something we want you to take urgent action about our giveaway. So Marissa's going to go into all the details right now.
Yes. So if you are tuning into this for the first time, we have an opportunity for you to basically win over $100 worth of free shit, which is awesome. So we're doing a giveaway for the month of December. Today will be the 28th. So it is the last episode that you're listening to that will give you a chance and a reminder to enter this giveaway. So really, really want to stress it here, guys. It's a super easy giveaway to win. Not a ton of people have entered in. So you have a very, very high probability of winning. We are basically going to be choosing 1 to 2 winners and going to be giving away $100 to $200 worth of gift cards to either Lululemon, Core Nutritionals, the Nutrition Corners, or even just Target or Visa or whatever it is you want to spend money on. We're going to get you a gift card to your favorite place that's going to support you in your goals, as well as send you brand new Barbell Lifestyle Podcast apparel, which will be launching in the new year and will be exclusive to you until we do launch it publicly. So again, if we only choose one winner, that's over $250 worth of giveaway value that you're getting for free for doing exactly the next steps. All you have to do is submit a 5-star rating review for the Barbell Lifestyle Podcast on either Apple or Spotify. And basically, just whatever you want to say about our show. If it's your first time listening and you're like, I'm doing this for the giveaway, or if you actually have nice things to say, we would appreciate that as well. But it's totally free for you to enter, and there's so much to gain. So take action on this now. If you're not driving, do this right away before you forget, because obviously you could win a sick prize. So yeah, enter the giveaway.
Do it now. Do it.
And not to forget too, that like the whole purpose of the giveaway is we just want to thank you guys. So like if you are a loyal listener and you are someone who has listened to every single episode, you've binged the podcast, it's like your Tuesday morning pick me up, like enter this giveaway so that we can thank you for the obviously listenership, the contributions that you've given to the podcast that has allowed us to do what we do, right? We obviously get to connect with a lot more people through this medium, and it wouldn't be possible if you guys weren't sharing it, listening, sending episodes to your friends. And like, we really, really appreciate it. And even if it's just like you have not shared a thing, but you just gain value from it, like we just want to say thank you for listening, because you make a lot of what we do as coaches and as business owners possible. So definitely just make sure to enter that if you are a loyal listener, because we love you and we appreciate you and we want to give free stuff back to you.
What Marissa said, that's exactly right. So let's dive right into the topic.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
After, hopefully you've paused this and you've written your review and you come back and you're ready to listen to all about cardio today.
Yes. So, why cardio might be hurting your fat loss. I know this is a super, unconventional thing that you might be facing, because cardio is typically like to burn calories. That's how you sweat. That's how you lose weight. That's kind of the conventions that we grow up with or learn. So basically we're going to be breaking some beliefs today. So, strap your helmet on, put your seatbelt on, like get ready, because this is going to be, we're going to really break this down for you.
Yes.
I'm so lame.
That's okay. I am too.
I'll admit it. Like yesterday on our, we had our first team open office hour, and I was like talking about something, and I was like feeling really passionate about like the message and the mission. I was like, yeah, like this for fitness and longevity and permanent change and blah, blah, blah. And then literally when I finished my like monologue, and you won't be able to see this if you're just listening to the audio, but I literally just like held my arm out and I was like, I'm dropping a mic. That's a mic in my hand. I just dropped it. And I did that in front of all of our clients. So
cool. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm the same way. There are things out like you say things and you're like, why am I like this?
Yes.
But I think that's why we're good friends. So.
Yes.
So
Awesome.
let's talk cardio.
Yeah, sorry, we'll bring it back to center here. So basically, I guess there's a lot of places that we could start with this, but I guess the best thing to start with is like, let's kind of explain at least how we view and have viewed cardio in the past, how a lot of people tend to view cardio, and why those things may not be as accurate as we think. So I guess the best place to start is typically we look at cardio as like the way to lose weight. And I think it's often put in a dichotomy of like, okay, there's, if you want to gain muscle and gain weight, you lift weights. And if you want to lose fat and lose weight, then you do cardio. And like people tend to view those two things as very, very separate instead of like both of them being tools that you can utilize as needed to achieve a desired result.
Yep. I mean, I don't know if fell victim to that is the right terminology, but I definitely believe that. So when I was in high school and college, like I was like a little cardio bunny, and that's all I would do. And I would do a little bit of weight training, but it was mostly just like cardio, cardio, cardio. I thought like I had to wake up and like run a mile every single day, and I hated it, but that's what I thought would help me. And did I see some results? Yeah, I did, but it wasn't the results that I was looking for. Like I didn't have that like tone, that muscle. I just kind of felt skinny fat. Like I was still like somewhat of the same physique, but just a little bit smaller. So I wasn't really happy. And even with weight training, like you'll see people in the gym who are like doing all these circuits, or they're doing like burpees in between their sets. And so they're not ever really letting themselves rest, or just like doing this like crazy intense circuit workout because they think that, oh, I need to do like high reps and I need to keep my heart rate up. And if I'm sitting there for 2 minutes on the bench waiting for my next set, I'm not being productive, and therefore I'm not going to lose weight. So I have definitely been in that position, and I currently still see a lot of people do that. So, I mean, if you believe that now, it's not like, oh, well, you're dumb. It's like, well, I feel like what you see on social media, and that's what you see all over like the internet. And so it's like, well, of course, I mean, we used to believe that too.
Right. Well, it's like these things just like are not thoroughly explained on social
Right.
media, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like you just see these snapshots of like this person's like, I'm doing fasted cardio on my contest prep or for my cut or whatever. And all you see is that. And maybe that's all they post, right? Like they go like do a selfie on the treadmill in the morning, fasted cardio, they repost a couple of memes, and then that's their story for the day, right? And you don't
Guilty.
right. It's like,
Yeah.
but you don't know if they lifted that day. And like, what if they had actually done a 2-hour strength training session that day too? Like, you just don't know. So it's like, we see these snapshots, and I think like it could obviously go both ways with like, this person never does cardio or they always do cardio or whatever. But I think far too often it's like, whatever biases that we already have of like, this is what I believe about how cardio helps me lose weight because maybe it's worked for me in the past, or this is what people have told me. And, it's like, it's almost like the really condescending, like douchebag male figure that you hear about. Everybody that has had a bad experience in the gym has like had an experience where like, the man comes up to the woman and says like, oh, you need to just, why are you in the weight section? You need to do more cardio. Like I've heard multiple accounts of like a client saying that has happened to them, or like a family member has been like, oh, like you're trying to lose weight. Like, stop doing all that stuff with your food scale and your diet. That's weird, but just do more cardio, right? You hear that from people all the time. So how are these beliefs then being integrated to what you see on social media and what you consume? And then how does that influence like what you choose to take action on?
Yeah.
And
Well,
go ahead.
I was going to say, you and I are definitely guilty of that, because when we are in contest prep, or if we have clients who are dieting, we typically do increase cardio. But I think it's like you said, well, what other factors are at play? So is it just the cardio that's helping you achieve your fat loss, or what other factors are there to help achieve that? But typically, if you are trying to lose weight, then adding in cardio is a good tool. But I think that's a good way to phrase it, is it's a tool. So there are other tools that we utilize in order to help you lose fat. So we'll definitely get into a lot of those, but I think you still have some more things to say.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I was just gonna, because you kind of said, give a backstory of like where you came from with your beliefs about
Yeah.
it. And I feel like my experience was different, at least from my recollection right now. So I feel like it'd be valuable to like kind of give two different perspectives. So like,
Mhm.
I was also a cardio bunny, very, very much so. But I kind of did that less out of a fear of like lifting weights will make me bulky. I don't really think I ever thought that. I think I was too narrowly focused on what cardio would do for me and like what would be the benefit of me just doing a bunch of it rather than even exploring the avenue. And I don't even think touching weights for a long time even crossed my mind. So I came more from a place of like, I understood and I like dove a little bit into like the premature science of like Lane Norton on Instagram of like calories in versus calories out. Cardio helps you burn calories. That's what the machine tells you, right? Like you do 60 minutes on the treadmill, that's 600 calories, right? So like for me, it was more so the belief of cardio equals calories burnt equals closer to my goal because I'm creating a bigger deficit. And so I was very much like trying to follow those principles of like, let me lower my intake, increase my expenditure, and get to that, state in my body as soon as possible. But I was just totally missing like what benefits weight training even had. I had just had no idea, no awareness. So I think some people can come from that too. It's like, it's all you really know. So it's like, have you even considered trying what the weights can do for you, which will definitely get into those benefits.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other part of it too is, it's the barrier or resistance to weight training sometimes where you walk into a weight room or weight section and it's like, oh gosh, like I don't know what to do. So I'm going to go to the gym. I'm just going to hop on the treadmill because I know how to
Right.
walk.
Yeah. Or
I
like
know.
someone does tell you that you should just do cardio and in a demeaning way, right?
Right. Yeah. So I think it's just easy to hop on and you don't really have to do anything, but you feel like you went to the gym and you worked out and you were productive. So, I mean, it makes sense. And like you said, too, it's like, at the end of your session, you can look at your watch or you can look at the machine and it tells you how many calories that you burned. And it's just it feels like a very black and white thing to do.
Oh yeah, and it feeds into instant gratification, right? Because you get
Mhm.
immediate confirmation from your watch, like you burned 700 calories, and it's like it's like we live for that instant gratification. We live for like just knowing right away, like is what I'm doing like working towards my goals? Because lifting weights doesn't do that for you. Like you lift weights, you get kind of tired, and then you're like, ugh, I'm sore. Like this all just seems like
Yeah.
negatives, right? And it's like
Yeah.
only months into the process where you're like, oh, I can feel muscles. I am stronger. Like I feel better. So it's so much of that like immediate need that we have for the validation of like, are my efforts in vain or not, in that moment.
Yeah. And it's the same thing too. Like you just made me think of, you walk into a weight section, you do a workout, and maybe you're not super sore, or maybe you're not super tired, but you walk out like, I could have maybe done more, or I don't really feel that tired. Whereas if you do an hour of cardio or you do that crazy hit style circuit workout and you're drenched in sweat, that feels more productive. And that feels like that's going to get you closer to your goals.
Yeah. And I think a big theme here, I really like where this conversation is going. I think a really big theme here is like being able to put away that immediate gratification, that need for that, because all of the right ways to go about fat loss is a lot more centered on like the habits that actually you don't see that immediate return, right? Like you don't necessarily feel quite as productive, because again, you take rest periods, don't absolutely kill yourself in the gym. For example, I mentioned on an earlier episode, I had a friend who's going to start joining me in the gym. She started yesterday. It's been super fun. And she just picks up on things quickly. So it's pretty easy to just kind of integrate her into the workout. But my goal for her, well, like we talked about in a previous episode, was I don't want to make her crippled of soreness. I accomplished that goal. I asked her this morning, I was like, how are your arms? And she was like, they're fine. Like they're a little sore. And I'm like, yes, I did it. And she was like, but
I didn't kill her.
yeah, but like they're functional. And I was like, perfect. We want the same thing today. And it's like, okay, that might not feel productive to her because like she's not like dying, but it's like, okay, but she's actually able to go to the gym 3 times this week instead of killing her on day one and just having her quit. Right. And so like, how is this playing into the long term? And for most people that we both, Christina and I, work with, and I'll speak for you because I just know that this is true, is, you know, for most people, it's the easing into anything and like taking something slow at first that plays into someone being able to stick to something long term that like we undervalue. And we do the same thing with cardio and overdoing that. We do the same thing with, you know, going too hard in our weight sessions in the gym up front and just burning ourselves out. So I think there's just a big theme here with delayed gratification in this whole cardio discussion that I think is really apparent.
Yeah. And so there are so many things that we could talk about when it comes to fat loss and when it comes to like pushing past plateaus or mistakes that people make. So to summarize that, if you go back to episode 3 of the podcast, we have a episode that's all about dieting mistakes. So mistakes that we see people make. That's a really good one. And then we have episode 15, which is everything you need to know about fat loss. So definitely take a listen to those. But if you're very curious about cardio specifically, that's what we're going to start diving into right now.
I love that. That was very resourceful. You were like episode 3, and I was like, what the heck was episode 3? I was like, I know what 1, 2, and 4 were, but for some reason that like just completely escaped me.
Yeah. No, I had to pull them up and look at them too, because I was like, I know we've done obviously a lot of topics on this, but which one? So 3 and 15. And I would actually say 15 is probably one of our most listened to and most helpful podcasts.
Yeah, definitely. So
let's get into Sorry, I was going to say, let's get into the science. So I know that you have some things that you want to talk about.
I have science. Yes, I do.
Give us the science.
So yeah, basically I'm going to kind of whittle this down as much as I can, but basically there have been studies to show, and like, I'm not going to be the person who sits here and says like, what's the author, what's the year? I don't have the memory for that. There are definitely people in this industry who do, and that's awesome that they have that in their brain. I don't, but I listen to them firsthand. So I know that these things are true as long as you trust that like I'm taking a reputable person's word. So basically echoing some of the leading researchers in the fitness industry, there have been studies to show how like implementing a lot of cardio can actually just make fat loss harder for you. And so I kind of want to take you guys through a story, and I'm actually going to share something that I don't think I've ever shared on any social media platform or a podcast episode, and I've alluded to it, but I just like have refused to say it. But I just want to actually express this because of like how extreme in nature this actually like makes this conversation. I've talked about this multiple times with my contest prep in 2018 of how I had a really, really hard time losing body fat towards the end, especially. And there was just, I had to dig to very, very deep depths in terms of what I had to do to get close to stage lean. I don't even know if I can necessarily say I was all the way there. And basically, a lot of these studies parallel kind of what happened in my journey. So that's why I'm bringing it up, is if you're doing a lot of cardio, I mean, you think about what Christina just said, it's like, you just get tired. Like it wears you out to get your heart rate up, keep it up for extended periods of time. If you're running, you are like pounding on your joints. Like, so there's a lot of different like fatigue aspects of cardio that, you know, what happens outside of that session. So for me, basically my struggle was I just was not in enough of a deficit to be losing what I needed to lose. So what was happening here, and here's what I haven't shared with anyone, my actual cardio protocol. So here's what I did. I woke up and I did 1 hour of fasted cardio, and my heart rate had to be in a moderate range. So that was like 130 to 150. I tried to keep it in there. And then I would come back and I would eat breakfast, do some work. And then I would go to the gym mid-afternoon, because if I went any later, I would die of tiredness. And then I would lift for like an hour, hour and a half. And then I would do a post-workout 60-minute cardio session. Now, I'm not alone in this. There are competitors that have done that as well, but it's just rare because it's like our metabolisms are adapting. And so I had to go to very, very extreme lengths. I would not recommend that for any single person in the lifestyle kind of goal, because it's just not necessary. And here's why. It wasn't necessary for me in hindsight. And I talk about this all the time, is if I had had a step tracker, a Fitbit, an Apple Watch at that point in time, I would have understood why I wasn't continuing to make progress if I took track of my steps across the weeks, across the days. Because what was happening was I was tiring myself so much with cardio that I had no energy for the rest of the day. And I was compensating all of my energy so that basically we talk about, if you've ever done a macro calculator, it tells you what is your TDEE, total daily energy expenditure. That just ended up evening out with what it was when I was doing 1 hour of cardio or 45 minutes, because I was just like compensating energy by being a vegetable on the couch the rest of the hours of the day. And it really, really impacted my fat loss. And so what a lot of these studies show is like the ones in particular that are like very high quality, they put people in what are called metabolic chambers, where it's literally a room. Like it's like quarantine. They put you in a glass room and observe you like a lab rat, but people consent to it. Like they sign up, they get paid for these studies, but you get in a metabolic chamber for however much time they need you in there. And you just live your life in the chamber. And the whole chamber like takes the gas exchange that you're putting in and out, and it measures your calories burnt and expended and all that from you living in that chamber. It's the most accurate way to do it. And it's crazy because it's like they've compared what happens when you do like all this cardio versus you just kind of like keep your movement up throughout the day, and it could be equal. So one thing that we'll get to in terms of a solution is sometimes just keeping track of your steps over the course of a long period of time can accelerate your fat loss with a lot more ease, a lot less hassle, less effort. Like you don't have to drive to the gym to be on a cardio machine, and you can still get the same type of expenditure out of it. Now, obviously there's situations where cardio sessions and getting your heart rate up will be more beneficial to add in. But again, it's a tool, right? It's not something that we need to rely on in order to lose fat. And that's kind of where my story, I was definitely relying on that to get any sort of movement in for that day, because I wasn't doing anything outside of that. So in hindsight, I could have made that prep a lot easier on myself by tracking steps. And so wanted to kind of use that example to parallel with the study.
Yep. And you and I have had the same coach. So we were definitely in the same position, but I think that is very typical of that particular coach's strategy when it comes to contest prep. Not everyone that he coaches is that way, but you and I definitely struggle to get contest prep lean, which is the case with a lot of different people. But when you are just doing lifestyle dieting, you should not need to do that much cardio.
Yeah, no. And here's the other thing too, is I've been working with Brandon for it'll be 2 years in January. Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, 2 years in January. And he takes like the complete opposite stance, and he is as anti-cardio gets. And he will go to extreme lengths to avoid putting it in somebody's program. And so every time I do like a mini cut or a fat loss phase or anything like that, typically the first thing that we do is literally just we slash diet, and we kind of bump up the step goal, but we just don't even touch cardio, in part because I don't follow through on it, if I'm being totally honest. Like not in contest prep, but like lifestyle, I don't follow through on it very well. So it's like him knowing that I probably won't actually do it. And that's something that's like, you have to know yourself. Like, are you going to do it? Or like, do you have to figure out another way? So that's something that like he does, is like, he much more heavily relies on just diet to create that deficit. There's pros and cons to that, but it's just kind of goes to show like there's really two sides of how you can achieve that calorie deficit.
Yeah. And like you said, and it's the same thing with our clients. It's like, what is going to be the most realistic for them? Like I had one client in particular who told me that even just her steps being around 8,000 or 9,000, she was like, I'm having to get on the treadmill for 45 minutes at the end of the night every single day to hit my step goal. So can we lower this? And I was like, oh my God, I wish you had told me that sooner, because I don't want you having to feel like you need to do all of this cardio at the end of the night.
Oh my
But
gosh, yeah.
some people are like, I want to do all the cardio so I can eat all the food, and, or like, I want to avoid cardio. And yeah, so it really just depends like what is going to be realistic. And I typically like to manipulate food, kind of like what Brandon was saying, because I think that if you are tracking your macros, which you are very tedious about, then I feel like you can be very specific, and you can, when you make smaller changes to the diet, they actually matter, because again, you're being very accurate with your diet. So I think that that's kind of an easier and more accurate way to be in a deficit.
Oh yeah. And like to build on that, I think one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of people make is they rely on cardio. They say like, oh, I'm going to lose fat, I'm just going to add cardio sessions, right? So like, let's like actually break down like rough numbers for this. So if you were to do like 3 30-minute sessions in your week of, let's say 30 minutes gets you 300 calories of burned calories. So that'd be 900 calories, per week that you would be burning. If you did 3 sessions, 30 minutes, 300 calories, that's generous too. Like what the treadmill tells you, what your watch tells you is probably not right, just saying, but we'll get to that. So let's say that's 900 calories per week. Now, what happens if you enter like a 300 calorie deficit? So same number of calories, but just daily, right? 3 days, like 7 days a week. That's 300 times 7. That's 2,100 calories across your week that you are now creating a deficit with. So if you, like Christine said, if you're being accurate, like there's just so much, that's more than 2x the impact on your calorie deficit from a small change in diet that you're doing daily in your habits, compared to like feeling like you're putting in a lot of effort doing 30 minutes of cardio here and there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think that the other thing too is when you're adding in a ton of cardio too, there is, you adapt to it pretty easily and pretty quickly. So, when, let's say, you're first just starting a diet and you add like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to add in 30 minutes of cardio every single day. Well, you just added a ton all at once. But what happens is, and we talk about this all the time with plateaus, is your body will kind of be like, and it adapts, but then, it freaks out, but then it kind of is like, okay, well, this is our new norm. Like, this is our new normal. And so it adapts and basically like, okay, well, now this is our baseline. And so in order to see more results or see more fat loss, you have to do more and more and more. So that's another thing too, to think about when you are trying to diet or try to lose fat.
Yeah, no, and it's like you really want to use that cardio sparingly, like as a tool to like push your body when you need it, because exactly what you said. And so I'm going to argue from the opposite point of view here. Let's say like, oh, well, why does your body adapt? Like my watch says, or my treadmill says I burn 300 calories every single time I do 30 minutes on the treadmill or cardio or whatever. It's like, yes, that's what the treadmill says. The treadmill is calibrated for a 200-pound person. And like, they're not accounting for adaptability or exercise status. The treadmill doesn't know who you are. Remember that. But then also like, think about it from like people who like do cardio as like what they want to do, like marathon runners, triathletes, people who just like run long distance and do that as their like quote unquote sport or like hobby. Adaptation is good. It's like if people were completely wiped after a 30-minute run, every single time they did a 30-minute run, they didn't adapt, no one would be running marathons. Like, how do you think people get to that point where they can run 26 miles? Their body adapts, they burn less calories, burn less energy, doing the same thing over a period of time. So that, yes, of course, they're refueling with gel packs and carbs and sugar through their run, but they're like really, they're really adapting so that it's minimizing the amount that they're burning. In another word for this is biomechanic efficiency. So like your body is becoming more efficient at what it's doing, whether that's ellipticaling or running for a marathon. So
ellipticaling.
Yeah, I know. Words are hard.
Yeah. If anyone is just side tangent, if anyone is a bow hunter, you know that Cameron Haynes runs a marathon every single day.
Oh God. I've heard about that. I've heard about that person.
Yeah. Kim, it's crazy. But yeah, but he's adapted, and it's like for him, it's just like, oh, it's just another day to run a marathon. And I think it's
Yeah.
hilarious that like people have to do like marathon prep. And of course, like he didn't start off that way, but it just, yeah, it's like the adaptation where it's like now it doesn't really phase him to do that.
Yeah, I watched a YouTube thing that someone put together where they did the Murph workout every single
Mm.
day for a month. And
Oh,
like by the end of it, he was just crushing it because it was easy. His body knew exactly what was coming at him every single day. And like, yeah, so he obviously saw results because it was only for a month. But like imagine if like that was your commitment to do it every single day for the next 6 months. It's like you're gonna hit a point of diminished returns there, like real hard.
yeah.
So I want to touch on kind of like what are the ramifications of doing excess cardio. We've talked about what are these benefits of weight training and like what are you risking? Why is it hurting your fat loss? So like beyond the adaptation and like it's just a big point of diminished returns that like you really can't get back. I mean, unless you just stop cardio cold turkey and then you get back to it a couple months later, yeah, it'll have an effect. But it's like beyond that, your body adapts. And then beyond the adaptation, like what happens long term. So really the cycle that tends to happen for a lot of people, and you hear the statistic 95% of diets fail. It's like, what does that even mean? It means people don't have trouble losing the weight typically, but they have a lot of trouble putting it back on. And if you go over that cycle over and over and over again, you will get to a point where you can't lose more weight and you will just continue putting weight on. And how that stems is if you do excess cardio, you restrict calories, you kind of take the fad or the quick approach to things, you'll lose muscle mass. And we've talked about this a number of times, but you lose muscle mass when you're under eating protein, under eating total calories, and you're not doing weight training, because what your body needs to retain muscle is your muscles just need a stimulus. They either need the stimulus from the protein that you're eating, saying like, hey, I'm feeding my muscles with this protein. And your muscles are like, great, I can eat this and like, or, consume this protein and stay around. Or we train the muscles and basically giving them a signal of like, hey, you need to stick around, right? Like you need to not atrophy and go away because like we're still using you here. So that's why strength training is so important in a fat loss phase. But if we lose that muscle, what happens to our metabolism? Muscle is one of the main drivers in our resting metabolic rate. Muscle is expensive energy wise. It takes up a lot of energy to maintain through protein intake and just through total calories. Like if your muscles are recovering, it takes up a lot of calories. So that's kind of like the delayed gratification that you don't see is like maybe you don't get super, super sweaty or super, super worn out from your lift, but the 24 to 48, sometimes 72 hours post session that you're recovering, your muscles are recovering, eating up fuel, trying to rebuild themselves and get stronger so that next time you do it to them, they're not, going to be hurt the same way that you did the first time. So your metabolism is really revved up by strength training from that. And there's a lot of extra calories that you burn over the course of the week when you strength train regularly that you just don't really even notice or think about. So your metabolism can drastically go down if you lose muscle mass. So that's something to really think about. And then again, if your metabolism goes down, your metabolic rate goes from, let's say it goes from total energy expenditure of 2,000 calories per day to 1,800 because you lose some muscle. And then if you go back to normal eating after your diet, you could be in a surplus without even meaning to. Even if you're tracking, even if you're eating 2,000 calories, that's a 200 calorie surplus then, right? Because you lost that muscle mass. So a bunch of different things to think about. Hopefully that's not all too much info at once, but those are definitely some things to be wary of when you're, relying on cardio.
Yeah. And I think a good example that, or maybe not a good example, but a very visual example of a lot that a lot of people use is the marathon runner versus the sprinter, right? So the marathon runner is usually like very small, very scraggly. And then you have the sprinter, usually has some pretty big glutes, big legs. They're very strong. They look very muscular. And so that's sometimes it's like, like, oh, this is why you shouldn't do cardio. And so we're not telling you to not do any cardio, because cardio is very beneficial. It's good for your heart, your cardiovascular health, and a bunch of other things. But kind of like what Marissa was saying earlier, like when you adapt And if you're doing something for a month or a year at a time, like your body starts to say, okay, well, this is what we need to adapt in order to achieve. So marathon runners, it is typically not advantageous to have a lot of muscle, to carry a lot of muscle, because they need to be efficient with running. They need to be light. So that is what typical marathon runners look like. I'm not saying that's all. There are definitely like anomalies, people who have a lot of muscle and look really good, but for a majority of them, that's how their body adapts. And sprinters, they need to be fast, they need to be quick, but they need to be powerful. So typically, in order to be powerful, you need to have a lot more muscle. So I feel like it's just a good visual representation. If you do hours and hours of cardio, your body is probably going to adapt to be more efficient at doing those hours of cardio.
Yeah, in the 3 weeks in high school that I did track, I learned one thing, and that the sprinting side of the team had bigger calves than the distance side of the team.
All the men listening to the podcast, their ears just pricked up.
Yeah, I mean, like it's even frustrating for me because, like, small calves, big dreams, but here we are. Yeah, so I mean, obviously, like sprinting or lifting weights may or may not fix the size of your calves, but you have a better chance at growing your calves with strength training and sprinting or whatever than you would with distance running. So
yeah.
So I guess that kind of brings us to like what we were talking about with like different coaching styles and all of that. And like, I mean, here's where I'm at is like, if I had to make someone pick between, they have 30 minutes in the gym, what are we going to do? And it's between lifting and cardio. It's always going to be lifting because of all those benefits that I laid out, because of all the ramifications of only doing cardio that I laid out. And frankly, it's just like the more and more people that I talk to, the ones that just rely on cardio are the ones that are getting nowhere. And like, it's like, there's just proof in the pudding. I know the science behind it. There's just so many different layers to like, I know that this is going to be more beneficial long-term if we can get bought into this and like, just really trust the process with lifting weights.
Yeah. And I like what you said, because it's like, it's the long-term benefits, right? So like, oh shoot, I only have 30 minutes. Well, you and I are thinking long-term. Well, whereas, a 30-minute cardio session versus a 30-minute lifting session, over the course of weeks and months and years, the cardio is not really going to add up as much as a weightlifting session would.
Right. And actually there's a podcast I was listening to a while ago that you just made me think of, is like the benefit of the cardio session starts and ends in the cardio session. So if you do 30 minutes, it's like your benefits are done as soon as you step off and stop burning those calories, right? Like you might have a little bit of, post-exercise, breathing heavy, catching up on oxygen, but like beyond like the couple of minutes you're catching your breath, like that's it. That's the benefit you get. With lifting, it's like, okay, 30 minutes of lifting, 24 to 48 hours of recovery, right? And it's like all of this that adds up over the course of weeks and months, and you're just going to get so much more out of it. I guess also I want to harp on this because jump squats in between sets of weighted stuff. Let's stop that. Here's why. So basically, I think you hit it on the head, Christina, earlier when you were talking about it. There's a lot of beliefs that like when we work out, we need to keep our heart rate up because that is better for our expenditure, our calorie deficit, our results, like whatever the calories or the expenditure is tied to, we believe that, right? And I think especially in women, we are so geared toward productivity. We are so geared toward like, how do I make the most out of every single second of my day? Because I have so many things on my plate to do. And I think we speak very well to that population of women. And so like, if you're the one that feels like that, and you've been in a position, or you are in a position where you are supersetting, jumping squats with your barbell squats, or you are, just trying to keep your heart rate up throughout your workout instead of taking adequate rest periods. I really, really want to challenge you to think of that differently, because the purpose of lifting, again, is not to elevate your heart rate. That's the purpose of cardio. And they're two separate tools that you can use. And the problem with trying to combine them instead of like having them operate separately is you're kind of taking away from the benefits of lifting when you couple them together and try to get the best out of both worlds. Now, the intentions, I understand, are great. It's like, let me get like the most for my time. Let me make sure I get the most bang for my buck. But what we're really doing is the higher our heart rate, the more we're exerting ourselves in between sets, the less we can put into those then sets. And then the less recovery we're going to have to do in between weight training sessions, the less long-term benefit we're going to get from every single weight training session versus let's take the longer rest period. Let's actually like sit there and wait and recover. And then let's literally kill ourselves on the next set and then rest, rinse and repeat. And like that can get you so much farther.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, I mean, it's exactly what you said. So if you're sitting there and you're squatting and let's say go up to the bar and you've been doing 95, like you've been able to squat 95 pounds. And then instead of sitting on the bench and resting for a minute or two, trying to catch your breath and recover, you do 20, jump squats or burpees, and then you try to do your sets of squats again. You may not be able to do 95 pounds again. You might only be able to do the bar. So your output is lowered significantly. Whereas if you sat there and recovered fully and, maybe your rest period was 60 seconds, but you need 90 seconds to catch your breath. And then you go, and instead of doing 95, well, you feel recovered and now you can do, 105, you can add on a couple pounds. And so your output has now increased. So that's another thing that I like to consider too, is again, you may not feel like you did as much, but if you're able to do that again, not just that one particular session, but over the course of a month or a year, if you're able to increase your weight, you're going to see a huge increase in strength, which again, you're just going to build that much more muscle.
Right. And I want to hit on this one more time too. The output within session may not be higher, right? Like you may burn more calories by, lifting and supersetting and jumping and burping and doing all those things within the hour that you might have at the gym, or 45 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever it is. But it's the long-term benefit that you get from really taking that rest and really putting all of your energy into those sets and your intent behind it, and really keeping those things separate. So yeah, I love this. I hope that we can help at least a couple of people with breaking that belief and at least giving it a try, because here's what I've noticed too, is basically the app that both Christina and I use to have our clients train on, it has a built-in rest timer, which is awesome. I personally use the app myself. I made myself a profile and I just use it for my own training and plug my workouts into it so I can track my progress too. It comes with a built-in rest timer. So what I've noticed, even in myself, like I will say this, even for myself, I've noticed that it's actually, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, it's a longer time than I thought. And I was always just self-regulated on rest time. Pretty much my whole lifting career was just like, I'm just going to rest until I feel recovered enough to where like this next set I can do to my fullest capacity. Cause that's what's important, right? Is you want to be able to do it to your fullest capacity. Sometimes the 90 seconds like pushes me a little bit longer than like I otherwise would have waited. And then I come to realize it's like, I'm scaling up in weight so much faster than when I was auto regulating my rest period. When I really take that time to wait, like I'm actually more productive in terms of amount of total volume moved in the gym. And what I've also noticed is when I follow those rest times, it's just more consistent in terms of how quickly can I actually finish my workout. Because you might think like, oh, you auto-regulate your rest time, you don't take the rest when you necessarily don't need it, and you get your workout done faster. Well, no, because if I'm like being very intentional and mindful about my rest across the whole workout, even rest times, even if they're longer, I'm just focused on that, right? I'm not like getting lost in my phone. I'm not like spending an accidental 2 minutes in between one or two sets and then like trying to make up for it on the other ones. Like it's just even, it's consistent, and you're getting a consistent amount of effort, intention, focus throughout the whole workout. So that's something I've noticed with myself, with my clients too. They'll make comments at the beginning of their programs like, oh, like I've I've never waited this long between sets before. I get kind of bored. And I'm just like, just wait till like week 4. Like it'll feel like not enough at that point. It's like you give someone 60 seconds, they're used to waiting like 20 to 30. And they're like, I just don't need it. And I'm like, wait till you're like 15 pounds heavier on this movement, because like you just weren't using enough weight before. And when you get to that point where like you need the rest, you're like, oh shit, I get it now.
Yeah. After do Bulgarian split squats and you're going to be like 20 seconds. What? I need 20 minutes.
Yes. I will say, like, I take a rest period sometimes between legs on Bulgarians, because like it's just
100%.
It's just so heavy, and like I get so out of breath from like anywhere from 10 to 15 reps that I'm like, I just can't, like, I can't.
Yep. So I think that I really love the way that this discussion is going. And so we had mentioned watches earlier, and, getting on the treadmill and seeing cardio calories burned during cardio. So, and we have mentioned this in numerous podcasts. While watches are great and they are a very nice way to be able to track things and get a good baseline and being able to manipulate, they are not always 100% accurate. So like Marissa was saying earlier, a treadmill may, it says you burned 200 calories in a session. Well, it may not actually be 200. It could be 100. It could be 300. You just never know. And then it could be different from the treadmill you get on the next gym session or at another gym. So you are going to get varying pieces of data. So it's the same thing with weightlifting and your watches, your calories burn. It may not be 100% accurate. And it's the same thing with steps. Like you can actually wear 3 different types of watches, I'll have them calibrated the same way, and they're going to give you different readings. So does that mean that you shouldn't have one? Does that mean that you shouldn't pay attention to those things? Absolutely not. Again, it's just a very good, just kind of measure. So like you're kind of getting an idea of how active you need to be. So let's say you use the same piece of cardio equipment, or you use, again, the same watch every single day. Well, give or take, 1,000 steps, you still know how to manipulate to see changes. So if your watch says that every single day you get around 5,000 steps, okay, cool. Maybe it's 400 or 4,000, maybe it's 6,000. But if it's telling you 5,000 and you increase to 6,000 the next week, you're still increasing. And that data is, again, it may not be 100% accurate, but you're still able to manipulate it. So that's one of the things I really like to, I guess, a little caveat when it comes to trackers. But I think it's super important that we don't put all of this weight or like, this is 100% accurate. And then this is like the only way, or this is the only thing. So I always like to tell people that.
Oh yeah. I love this topic because, we've got some thinkers on our client roster, and I mean that in the best way possible. Just like, people who are really engaged in their fitness journey, in that like they have invest in, coaching, they invest in tools for themselves, whether that's watches or, like the recovery ring or what the R ring or whatever it is, like all these different tools. Right. And we just tend to place such a high value on these technologies. But like, frankly, like there have been stats that come out to show that these fitness watches can be wildly inaccurate. So like what you were saying, it is just a proxy. It is an approximation of like, okay, around where are we, and like what changes need to be made. And then the conversation I really like to have is to really push someone to think about, okay, beyond the numbers, like you're asking me like exactly how many steps do you need to burn, exactly how many calories do you think is accurate or is this off by? Like we even had a situation with a client who was wondering like, okay, so if my watch is off by this percent variance, should I adjust like my diet by the according amount of variance by doing X, Y, and Z and underestimating by X, Y, and Z? And it's just like, the answer is I have no freaking clue. And the reason being is like, what value is thinking so much about that data and about those numbers actually adding to your journey? Or is it adding stress and work that isn't actually getting you anywhere beyond like confirming the behaviors that you like probably already know you should be doing? So like, for example, it's like, what is the fitness watch doing to your behavior? It's encouraging you to move more, and it's encouraging you to, work out. And so like, if the goal here is lose body fat, because that's the theme we're running on today, then we need to expend more somehow or intake less. And we're probably working on that with dietary habits. We're probably working on that with lifting weights. And then when it comes to steps, it's like, oh my God, like I didn't, my steps were like all over the place this week, or like, I took my watch off for this period of time and this period of time, so this isn't accurate. Is that okay? Like the people that kind of get really worked up and stressed over that, kind of speaking to those people, because it's like, okay, but what happens if you just take away the watch altogether? Like, what value has that added to your life? Do you still go on walks? Do you still actively try to pursue those behaviors? Or like, are you only relying on the numbers that alone and only thinking about it in that bubble? We have to be able to zoom out and be like, what value do these numbers and does this data actually add? How much stress or extra work or thought does it add? How do we weigh that out? Which one outweighs the other? And then what effect does all of that stuff and the pros and cons there, what effect does that actually have on my behavior? Does it encourage me to walk more? Does it actually discourage me because the numbers make me anxious? Like, how is that actually affecting what we do? And that's the conversation I challenge you to have with yourself if you're very, very reliant on these types of tools.
Yeah. So that just made me think, so my watch died yesterday and I didn't wear it. And I knew that I had been sitting at my desk all day long. And even though I didn't have my watch on, I knew that I need to go take at least a 30 to 45-minute walk in order to get a okay number of steps for that day. Yep. Because it was just one of those days where I was glued to my computer. But I had been wearing my watch for a long period of time to kind of just say, I know I've probably gotten sub 1,000 steps today, and this is what I need to do. This is my behavior in order to get me at a okay level. Whereas there are other days where I know I'm running around my house, I'm doing, errands, I've grocery shopped, and, I'm just like in and out and like doing all these things. If I didn't have my watch on, I'm probably like, I'm actually probably pretty good and probably don't need to go on a walk. Or if I do, it's probably a shorter one. So I'm able to like auto regulate, but I am very much like, I like to see where I'm at, but it's not like, oh, I'm at 4,700. So I need to go walk around my kitchen for, 5 minutes to get my extra 300. I'm not to that point. If I'm in prep or if I'm dieting, yes, I'm going to do that. But just for now, for where I'm at, so I think it's really good to think about like, how does wearing my watch affect my behavior? What can I learn from this data? And how does that manipulate my behavior? So I think that was a really, really good point.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that example. I had something and it's gone. So
shoot.
Yeah, we'll move on. I don't think it was too profound. I think the last thing I'll leave on that, but yeah. So I guess like the last thing that I really want to mention here is like, okay, we talk about cardio is hurting your fat loss. We know that lifting weights is a great, solution for that, but what else can we focus on that is not going to like take away from our fat loss and it's going to help us? So you made a quick list. It's, we've talked about lifting weights. We've talked about step counting and just kind of getting a general metric of like, how much should we be walking? How much should we be moving, doing chores? And like, just making sure, like for me, it's like looking at my watch. I'm like, okay, I haven't been too much of an asshole today. Like, that's pretty much like the confirmation that I need. Oh, it came back. Okay. So we're all over the place today. This is the last podcast of 2021. So we're coming in hot. So, but it's like, what are these numbers to you? Is it confirmation of like, I could kind of do this on my own, but like, also it's just nice to kind of like see that and get that validation and be like, okay, cool, I am on the right track. And it's like confirming that to you. Or is it dependence? Like, is it like, I need to check on this thing and I'm not thinking about it actively enough or like applying it to my behavior in my life enough to where like, I actually understand what this means. I'm just depending on it. So really like assessing where you are there. And like, I'll extrapolate too. This is for everything. This is for diet. It's the same thing with my fitness pal. It's like, are you actually trying to learn the behaviors, learn what's in food and learn what choices you should be making so that you can like take that out into the bigger picture and not need that tool anymore? Or are you only going on like what are the numbers, not even paying attention to the foods, and just kind of mindlessly trying to figure out the puzzle. So really, like when it comes to all of this data with cardio, it's like, is this actually benefiting you, or have you developed a dependence toward it? And that's when it can be like a really healthy relationship of like, like Christina, your examples, you didn't necessarily need your watch to know these things. And that's the point you want to get to, versus like, it's like, oh, my mindset is I must hit 10,000 steps. Otherwise, like I am a failure. And like, I just need those last 54 steps. Like that is obviously a very unhealthy relationship. So that's what came and went. Basically, what other things you can focus on outside of lifting, steps, stress, sleep, just really like getting your body in a state where it's like okay to like let go of body fat, because when the body is stressed, it wants to hold on to resources. So stress and sleep are really big players in that. And then of course, just diet consistency. Like, everyone says, oh, it's all diet, but it's like, how many people act on that? So like really paying attention to everything with your nutrition, being consistent with that. Cause like we laid out, it can actually make a way bigger impact for like smaller perceived effort across weeks of time.
Yeah. So definitely go ahead and listen to episode 3 and episode 15. And I think that will really help in tangent with this episode. But I think we covered it. I think this was a really good one.
Oh yeah. I'm super happy with just kind of like all the things we were able to hit on. And, if you clicked on this and you were like, oh no, why is my cardio hurting my fat loss? And we clickbaited you. We hope that, you feel grateful that you were able to, to get to this episode because of however we were able to draw you in.
Yeah. And it's not to demonize cardio in any way. It's still very, very beneficial for you if you use the tool accordingly. And that's not to say too, like if you enjoy running, if you enjoy doing cardio, that you need to cut it out completely and only focus on steps or only focus on weightlifting. That's not what we're saying. We're just saying if you're doing tons, or if you're that person at the gym doing jump squats in between all your sets. So I just feel like we should point that out too.
Well, that and just context, right? Like
Right.
if you're just doing cardio because you enjoy it and like there's no like specific goal at hand, like great, do it. Like that's awesome. But like when the goal is measurable fat loss and you are trying to achieve that diligently and you have a plan and you're working towards that, that is when that's important, right? Is to not over abuse, to sprinkle it in, to make sure we're measuring these things appropriately and addressing context. So it's like, do as much cardio as you want. If like, it's just a hobby and you enjoy it, you have no desire to like make those changes to your body, to your fitness. Like that's when it's like, cool, do it. But just like, remember, figure out where you're at always, and then work from there.
Yeah. And I will always say that something is better than nothing. So I'd rather you get up and do cardio than nothing at all. So
yeah, that too.
So 2 things that I wanted to point out before we ended this episode. So number 1, the first thing that I was thinking of as we first started this episode was when I was looking at the reviews and for the podcast, I was scrolling and I was looking at some of them and I didn't realize that some of them are labeled like explicit because we cursed. And I was like, wow, like some of them we have like, I was like, wow, there's some that we haven't like cursed in. And I was like, that's interesting. So I was like going through and I was like, wow, we have a lot of explicit podcasts, which is funny because I don't feel like, we curse a lot or anything. And then I just was thinking about that as we started the podcast and it was like a couple minutes in and you were like, shit. I was like, well, there's the E. And then 2, I thought it was super funny that Marissa and I, before we started recording this podcast, we're like, oh yeah, we can definitely do this one in 45 minutes. And here we are an hour in because we like to talk, but those were my 2 funnies. But I just wanted to say, I think part of why these do go a little bit longer is because, again, Marissa and I have a lot of the same views on a lot of things, but we build off of each other. And it's like, we were like, oh, that made me think of this. And oh, you made me think of this. And we're also just super passionate about helping you guys. So I think that we could talk for a long time, but with that being said, I don't know if I should even say this right now because we haven't even like really talked about the details. But we did bring up something earlier about possibly doing like a live Q&A for you guys.
Oh yeah.
So if that's something that would interest you, let us know, because I think that'd be super fun to be able to like answer questions. And it may not be like an actual live episode, but at least just like getting on and being available to you guys. I think that'd be super cool.
Yeah. So we can basically stream to like Facebook and like, or have you guys join in on the Zoom call, and we can chat one like directly, and basically, whatever it turns out to be, conversation, Q&A, coaching tips, like anything like that. So yeah, we'll figure out how to set that up, and I think it'd be super fun.
Yeah, well, more details to come. And remember, if you have gotten this far in the episode, if you haven't already, make sure you do enter the giveaway, because we want someone to win. And we want it to be someone that is a pretty loyal listener to the show, because we want to just thank you so much for supporting us. But anyways, we hope that you guys enjoyed this episode all about cardio. And if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. You can find both of us on Instagram. You can find me at Christy Lynn Fit, and Marissa is at Marissa Roy Fitness. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we hope to see you back next week
in 2022. So
Woo!
Happy New Year, everybody.